I noticed you Kiss the Ground is a great organization working on compost. World Centric, we love compost. It's the lifeblood of our organization in terms of the circular economy. Um, so it's great to talk with you. So you're the environmental educator at Kiss the Ground.
Yeah,
Do you want to just explain a little about more about your organization?
yeah. So my name is Farmer Rishi. Everyone, I'm the gardening educator at Kiss the Ground, and I do a lot of this work on my own as well. I'm an urban farmer, and yeah, I've been working with Kiss the Ground for the last year. And what we're trying to do is create educational programs for people to one, understand what regenerative agriculture is, and the kind of the promise of regenerative agriculture around climate change, and
Mhm.
and a lot of our environmental issues. And specifically, what I work on is regenerative gardening, teaching people about regenerative gardening and how they can be a part of these solutions, in their balcony, in their patio, in their backyard, in their front yard, and how uh, all of these very powerful solutions are actually something that we can really dig into with our own hands and be a part of, be a, be a part of ourselves and feel that.
Yeah, and do you want to just remind people like what regenerative agriculture, regenerative gardening, like what that term means and to you or to other people or whatever you want to define it as.
Yeah, there's some different definitions floating around. I think the one thing that people can definitely agree upon, especially in terms of regenerative agriculture is basically a way of farming that treats the soil like the living being that it is, that treats the plants like the living beings that they are, and knowing that and basically what that means is treating them with care and respect, and the one of the results of that, sorry about this, uh, one of the results of that is that we're actually able to pull carbon out of the atmosphere and turn it into soil fertility. So that's kind of one of the key tenets of regenerative agriculture. We're actually turning the problem of excess carbon in the atmosphere into the solution of soil fertility, which is going to grow more and more nutritious food for people to eat.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that that's coming more to light in terms of, compost being a part of that whole cycle in soil health and everything like that. I feel like it hasn't gotten the credit in the past that it deserves. Do you want to just talk a little more about healthy soil and why it's important? Maybe not just for climate or including that?
Sure. Yeah. I like to just think of soil as kind of the skin of this earth body, right? And it's really the earth's largest organ. And how we treat the soil is for me also a reflection of how we treat ourselves. And for a long time we've been, especially through our agricultural practices, uh, degrading the health of soil. So we've been using tillage, the turning of the soil to kind of mine the nutrients that are in the soil. Uh, we've been uh, we've been trying to extract all the nutrition, all the fertility of our soils. We've been cutting down forests to plant annual crops like wheat and soy and corn. Um, and what regenerative, and we have some kind of strange ideas around, when we're doing these things, we have some very strange ideas that we're operating from. One is that uh, we culturally we kind of have this myth that we exist in opposition to nature and opposition to the earth, and the only way for us to eat is to cut down the forest, which is creating fertility, and mine that fertility. And what regenerative agriculture is saying is, you know, what if we did without, what if we remove this myth? And what if we said that we are one with the earth, and in
Hmm.
fact we can derive our food, and we can derive the resources that we need by actually planting forests, by caring for soil, by by enhancing and enriching ecosystems, by creating biodiversity. And that's really, what for me, what regenerative agriculture and what regeneration in general is all about, is just coming into this new relationship with earth, and one of the key entry points to that new relationship is soil.
Yeah, it really goes from this whole mindset of, control of the environment to working with in partnership with
Mm-hmm.
the environment and seeing yourself as a portion of that ecosystem rather than someone that's there to tell it what's up. And for a long time we ignored soil health and we added chemical additives, right? And how is that going and that whole process of fertilizers and pesticides, rather than feeding the soil itself.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at old textbooks around on agriculture and plant health, soil is referred to as a medium for roots to grow in. There's no
Mm.
measurement, or no knowledge even that soil contained, more organisms than there are people on Earth in every handful. There's no knowledge that there was no knowledge of the extreme diversity of organisms within the soil, and their contribution to soil health and their contribution to plant health. So the old idea was about feeding the plants, right? The soil
Hmm.
had nothing to do with the plant's health. We had to feed the soil through these petrochemical products, nitrogen fertilizers, potassium fertilizers. Um, and so we were basically trying to force the plants to grow. Um, and in doing that, when you're using those fertilizers, and these are things that are available to us as homeowners or home gardeners at our local hardware stores and our nurseries, things like like Miracle Grow and these chemical petroleum based fertilizers. They basically burn up the nutrients in the soil. They they are mining the soil in a uh, they're basically chemical mines of the soil. They're mining the soil through chemistry. And
Hmm.
what we're doing in regenerative agriculture, and what I think what World Centric is trying to promote today, is these ways of feeding the soil whole food, right? Just like
Hmm.
everyone is becoming aware for our own bodies, it's better for us to eat whole foods, whole plants, whole grains, whole animals. Um, we're at the same time we're getting this awareness that the soil needs whole food, and compost is a whole soil food. It's almost like a soil baby food is how I like to describe it. It's the leaves and the twigs and the food scraps and the manures and the microbes, and it's this kind of pre-chewed, pre-microbially inoculated, just like a mother bird is going to chew up the food for her baby, and she's going to get the enzymes on it from her saliva and the microbes from her mouth. Like, that is essentially what humans are doing by creating compost. We're acting as that mother bird for the soil that has kind of been degraded to the point that she's not able to care for herself. And so compost is a really important part of getting the soil health wheel turning.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. So how can people at home practice regenerative gardening? It looks like you've got your own patio garden behind you, but what are some good tips for people who maybe want to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different ways to get started. Kiss the Ground, of course, we have our educational programs. We just finished a 3-week regenerative gardening course that I led, and we're planning on offering that again, hopefully within a month or two. So if anyone's interested, I definitely encourage you to sign up, and I'll give some pointers here as well. So number one, the absolute number one thing for soil health is to remember that soil is a living being, and as a living being, soil is going to require much of the similar care that you require. So soil needs to eat, soil needs water, soil needs air, soil needs shelter, and our job as regenerative gardeners is to understand what is soil food, how does the soil like water, what is the soil's how do you provide shelter for soil. And composting is a really great way to start, because compost, like I said, is baby soil food. It's that soil that hasn't been treated well for a long time, and doesn't have her own strength. We can start by composting at home, composting our food scraps, turning something which we have known for a long time as waste. We say food waste, and we're gonna flip that around and say, hey, this is not waste anymore. This is a gift to soil, and it's that kind of magical transformation in your head where something is going from something that is gross and needs to be thrown away wherever away is, and turning it into this magical gift that actually we can use right here, that we want to use right here on our own patio, in our own balcony, in our own gardens. So composting is I think one of the easiest ways for people to start with regenerative gardening, and I really encourage people to have the easiest way I find for most people to start is to have a worm compost bin, because you can have that on a balcony, you can have that on a patio, you could have that even indoors. So worms have a very similar diet. The worms that we use for composting have a very similar diet to us. They basically eat fruits and vegetables. So a lot of your leftovers can be turned into gifts and food for the worms, and then the manure, the worm castings that the worms produce, is a gift for our soil. So we can use that in our potted plants. We can use that in the ground. We can even use that to further enrich other types of compost that we're making. So worm compost is really, really powerful, and one of the ways I really encourage people to start with regenerative gardening.
Yeah, worms are great. I had worms for a while until I accidentally killed them, but it happens. You live, you learn. I did a little composting thing on Wednesday, I think, for Instagram Live, and I forgot to show my book, Worms Eat My Garbage. So if you're looking to get into vermicomposting, this is kind of like the Bible, so to speak.
Okay.
Unless you have a different book, but I love this one, The Mary Applewolf. So that is great about, people getting started, maybe starting with vermicomposting.
Yeah,
you
I
want
can
to
actually,
maybe talk about, sorry, what?
I have a worm bin right here. Would you be all right if I showed
Oh,
it?
let's look at it. Let's look at it. That'd be great. Let's check in on them.
Yeah, I have 4 in my patio garden here.
Yeah, I found that it's sometimes best to have quite a few just because you don't want to overload them with food.
Absolutely, yeah. I recommend for everyone to have at least a couple different composting systems, whether it's multiple worm bins or a worm bin and a tumbler. Right, this one. So I have. Let me see how to turn my camera around.
Oh, you do that little circular symbol on the bottom.
Got it.
You press it. There you go. Yeah.
So I have 2 bins right here. This is called a hungry bin. This is something you can purchase. And I also have a video on my personal YouTube channel. And if you go to YouTube and you type Farmer Rishi, you can see how to build this one. And it's pretty simple. Just got a little bit of cardboard here, or paper, to keep the flies down. And you can see all the worms right there. Getting a nice view of that?
Yeah.
So these guys are really just chewing up perfect food for, any of your plants. And this system is pretty easy because you just keep adding food to the top. And then I have multiple trays underneath this. So I actually need a harvest, but right over here, this is all finished worm compost right here.
Oh, nice.
So you just harvest that out of the bottom tray, and the worms keep moving up as they finish the food on the bottom. They keep moving up toward the fresh food.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the benefits. I mean, there's many benefits to vermicomposting, but compared to like a compost tumbler where you keep adding food and so then your soil doesn't have a chance to fully biodegrade all the material. So with
Right.
vermicomposting, it's nice that you can get the finished product and then uh, be able to add more food scraps.
Yeah, exactly. I actually find that most people really have trouble with more of a turning compost system or even a tumbler, just because of the constant need to kind of balance the browns and the greens, the carbon and the nitrogen. And the worms are really great because you don't really need to be adding too much other than food scraps. Like occasionally I'll throw in some shredded newspaper, or I have a nice tree up here that will drop leaves onto the patio, so I'll just scoop those up and add those into the bin to kind of absorb some of the excess nutrients. But otherwise, it's such a simple system. Like I said, I have 4 of them, and that basically handles all of the food scraps that my wife and I produce on a daily basis.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for giving us a tour of your worm babies.
Of course.
Um, so I think this is a good question to tackle next. How can gardening be physically and mentally healing? I know a lot of us are looking for an outlet, particularly in these trying times of ways to get our hands back into the soil but yeah, if you want to speak to that, that would be great.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something I actually focus a lot on in my classes, because I think there's so much that we can see in the garden that kind of is not obvious when we're in our our day-to-day office lives, and a lot of things that we like, much like we were talking about before, like with waste, there's a lot of concepts that we have culturally that when you are in the garden, you can see that those concepts don't have a lot of basis in reality. And waste for me is one of those concepts. We have this idea that you consume something, right? Like you have an apple, you consume it, and then what's left is a waste, right? Something that has no value, something that's maybe toxic. And in the garden, you can see really clearly that waste doesn't really exist. Waste is a cultural idea, a cultural myth that we have, and actually, these things that we call waste are actually gifts that are connecting us to this earth, that we live, that we are. And so, when instead of seeing waste, you see, oh, I'm passing this gift. I have something that's extra that I don't need right now to the worms. And the worms are passing their gift to the plants. And the plants are dropping their leaves and feeding that back to the soil and feeding us fruit. And you can really have this. I think gardening gives you this tremendous sense of uh, a sense of connection, or rather, it helps you remember the connection that you have. Um,
Hmm.
and especially in these times when we're not able to see friends or family, and we might feel a little isolated. I think gardening is an incredibly powerful way for us to remember that even if we're physically separated from our friends and family for now, the connections that we have are real and always there. And it's and also the importance of nourishing those connections, um, however we can, in whatever situation that we're in.
That's great. That's beautiful. Thank you. So we've already talked a little bit about this, but I guess if there's any others you want to cover, what are some issues that you see in the current food system? I know we've discussed, the chemical additives rather than feeding the soil, and this concept of waste when it's really cradle to cradle. But if you want to elaborate on any of that or talk about any other issues that you see in our food system today.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's so much that we can talk about how industrial agriculture is a damaging system. What I want to say about our food system is that I think one thing that is severely lacking in our society is participation in our food system.
Mm.
We've
Oh, you're cutting out a little, at least for me. Maybe my phone's weird. There we go. Oh, I think you cut out a little bit there. At least you did for me. Now I can hear you. Yeah. So participation and maybe our complacency with our current system is.
yeah. I think we've and this is for so many different reasons, but I really feel like there's a lot of power that we can access by coming back into becoming participants in the food system. And I'm not saying
Hmm.
that we all need to go out and try to grow all of our own food, but I think there's a lot that we can just learn and understand by at least trying to grow some food at home, participate in the healing of soil at home. And I have just a patio here. This is a concrete patio. um, and I do my best to care for soil in these pots, and grow some food for myself and for my wife, in these pots. And so whatever your situation is, um, there is there is soil everywhere. There is soil underneath our concrete. There is soil underneath our asphalt. Um, and so we need to just remember that that's even there, and that in some cases that concrete or that asphalt can be lifted up, and or if not, we can grow.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And there's so many ways to get involved. Like you said, not everyone has to grow if they, don't want to, don't have the time or energy to care for something, but at least getting more involved into like where your food comes from or where things come from and getting a little more connection to those supply chains that involve real people and real places of the planet that could possibly being harmed.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 I mean, get to know about your food, get to know about where your food scraps are being put, if you're not able to compost on your own, are there options for you to drop your food scraps off to local composting uh, organizations? Like here in LA, we have a group called LA Compost that collects
Mhm.
food scraps at farmers markets. They have local composting hubs all over LA. So, just little small steps like that can give us that entry point and give us that feeling of help us remember that connection that we have.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to tell us more about the regenerative gardening and living course that you're starting up soon in case people really want to get involved in this? I assume it's going to be mostly online.
Yeah, yeah. So the course that is online. We just finished a session. We're putting another one together and wait for that at our website kisstheground.com. It's a 3-week course. We have 3 live sessions. We have short sessions, and it's basically just a deep dive to starting to grow your food at home in a regenerative way. So we focus a lot on understanding what soil is, how can we contribute to soil health, um, and also, and then just giving you the tools to get started with growing. We focus a lot on edibles because I what a lot of people are interested in right now. So
Hmm.
tools to uh, putting together potting soil, starting seeds, laying out a vegetable garden, just all the basic stuff that you need to get started. And once you go through our course, we keep supporting. So once you sign up for a course, we have every month we have a 1 hour Q&A session that we do that's available for past students to come to. So we want to,
Oh,
that's
good.
our way of kind of continuing to support everyone even after the course is over. Uh, and we're just really trying to encourage more and more people to start gardening, start composting,
Mhm.
start caring for soil at home. And yeah, like I
That's
said,
great.
the wait list is at the website kisstheground.com.
Oh, that's cool. So it's already been mostly filled. You're just looking at wait lists right now.
Actually, we're still finalizing the dates for the next session, so we just put up a wait list. So if you're interested, you can sign up for that, and we'll notify you when the details are finalized.
Great. Um, what are some other ways that listeners can get involved with Kiss the Ground? Do you have like a newsletter people you want people to sign up for? Obviously, follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, you can follow Kiss the Ground on Instagram. Follow me, Kumar Rishi, on on Instagram. There's an email newsletter you can sign up for at kisstheground.com. Uh, and we also have a membership program. So if you don't, you can it starts $1 a month. If you $1 a month, you get access to a monthly webinar that we offer, a membership webinar where we're doing different leaders in the ecological movement around the world. Uh, there's special accounts that are available to members, uh, and I think there's a few other benefits I'm not remembering right now. You can sign up for that at kisstheground.com as well. Lots of videos to learn more. Some really popular videos are the soil story and the compost story. There's another one that just came out, dynamic farming, how that differs from industrial farming. So there's a lot of media that you can access. And if you want to support uh, farmers and transitioning to regenerative agriculture, uh, we have a program where we're providing scholarships for farmers to.
Well, that's great. Well, I've so enjoyed our conversation. It was a great end to our Instagram lives about International Compost Awareness Week. So thank you so much for joining me today, and everyone have a great weekend.